Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to quickly show you the final result of this transformation with this abaya. It's a bias cut abaya that was made in Dubai, especially as a request for a customer. Now she came back to England and she tried it on, and there was quite a few problems with when she wore this. The main problem was at the back here, because it's on a bias cut. The area around here, it tended to gather. So what we did with this abaya was I took it apart, and after taking it apart I took out the sort of pinpointed the problem area, pinpointed the problem area, and then I've explained what the problem is and how to get how to resolve that problem. There is quite a bit that I've explained inside how to go about cutting this, where I've explained it on a sort of like a small piece of paper and pinpointed where the problem is. So I hope that you don't actually encounter a problem with your abaya where you have to amend it, but if you wanted to sew it from scratch, then it sort of just gives you some ideas on how to get the perfect cut. It is a very difficult cut to get a good to achieve a good result from. Oh, what's the matter? Good result from. So I would say experiment with something. Now you can see the because of the bias cut, you can see the flow when you hold this up. Now when you're wearing it, as long as there isn't the misalignment, you shouldn't get that puckering in the middle. So I hope the problem has been resolved. I did have to take it completely apart to first of all pinpoint the problem and then to eliminate it. Without pinpointing the problem, there's no way of really getting to the conclusion. My original idea was to take off the back and actually insert a piece there, which I've managed to avoid doing because it was, once I'd taken it apart, it was quite easy to pinpoint where the problem was. So if you can see the problem, then often if there's margin in there to eliminate it, then it can be done. So anyway, that's just a couple of ideas for you, and I'll try and put it all in one video so it's not too much of a hassle. I'm sure you'll enjoy the video. This is the rest of the video is to follow on. So if you want to see how I transformed and got rid of that mistake, then just continue watching. Take care. Bye. Assalamu alaikum. Now today we're looking at a problem with an abaya that is the very flary cut, bias cut abaya. And basically, if any of you have bought these abayas from Saudi Arabia or Dubai or any of the Arabian Peninsula countries on a bias cut, then you may have noticed a problem on the back of the abaya where the bias fabric tends to stretch over the waist area and it actually slants up. Now this was made specifically for a couple of friends of mine who went to Dubai and had these abayas personally stitched. Now, one of the problems that you often have when you get them personally stitched, especially in Arabian countries, you're there for a limited time, and by the time the item comes back sewn or something, you're on a flight back, and then problems occur where you can't take it back to the designers because you've got limited time. So basically that's what's happened with these friends of mine, and they bought these abayas. Once they brought them home and they've worn them, there's a massive dent in the back of the abaya. Now because these abayas are cut on abayas, often there are problems in the layout. Bias fabric is generally very difficult to sketch and cut. Now when you cut something like this, you have to make sure that it's absolutely precise. Now the problem we have with this is when we even it out, the fabric is one is more and one is less, and there is a slight deficiency in the shoulder area also, and most likely that is the reason why then you go on to have the problem with when you're wearing this garment. Now, how do you resolve it? Very difficult to resolve because it's on a bias cut. Now, these abayas have been lying with me for months, and I have actually been reluctant to tackle this. So if you were going about cutting something like this, what would you do? Well, think very carefully. If you're going for a cut like this, first of all, what I would suggest is to experiment on a fabric that is not of that high quality. And if you're going to Arabian countries and perhaps have the idea in your head that you're going to get one of these designed and stitched for yourself, then be very careful on the time schedules and so on. If you're there for 2 weeks and if you go and source out some machinists and some designers, and then you know they give you a time where you're due to fly back perhaps a day prior to your item coming to you, then you will not have the time. If you're not happy with it, that's what you're going to be stuck with. And basically this is often the case when we go to, whether it's an Arabian country or whether it's Pakistan, India, we often limit ourselves on the time, and then by the time our garments are made and come back to us and we're not happy, we're stuck with them. So be very, very careful, especially on designs like this. On bias cut, I've never been really fond of this cut because of the fact that the way it hangs. If it's got a split on the waist, then you can get a very nice fitting with these type of abayas. But if it's all one floor, I think we actually assume these with English dresses. Now, if you notice many of the free-flowing dresses, English type of dresses, then what they will have is they will have perhaps sleeveless from the top. Maybe they are all in one piece, but they're off the shoulder or halter necks or anything like that. And with that kind of a cut, all in one cut in abayas, you can actually get it. When our abayas tend to be quite fitted on the upper portion with full sleeves, and if the fabric is all one piece, and if you're going to fit sleeves onto this and you're thinking that I want it all in one piece, then you will have problems. Now, often with a cut like this, you have the slanted sleeves, and most likely you will find in my videos a video somewhere here or there where I have addressed that issue, where you have a slanted shoulder seam. So basically what you have is, let me just give you a small example of what this generally looks like. So I'm just going to quickly draw it out for you and try and explain where the problems are and where often the way these garments are designed. If I can find a marker pen. Now I'm just gonna take a small breather here, and I'll come back and I'll address this because I need a fairly strong marker to be able to pinpoint this. Okay, so we'll come back. Now, when it comes to cutting on a bias, basically what you're doing is, imagine this to be your fabric and you're actually cutting this on a bias. So often what we have is we have the angle where the fabric is folded. So just to make this easier, what we'll do is we'll cut along the line. Sorry about this, I tend to be losing everything these days. So first thing, you need a fabric which is 60 wide. So if the wider the width of the fabric, the more better. Now I'm going to cut this off just to make the explaining easy. So what we basically have is a fabric which is the width and the breadth is the same. Okay, so if you've got a 60-inch wide fabric, then you imagine 60 to be that and 60 to be this, and then you're folding that in half. Now basically on a bias cut, this is your length, and then you are taking excess of this off, and from here you're creating the shoulder and the cut. Okay, so you've basically got your neckline, your armhole, your waist fitting, and then this is flared out quite a bit. Okay, so basically you've got that as your full, and that's what we've got with this. What we've got laying on the table in the black is basically that's the gear, and that's the whole width of the floor of the garment. And then you've got your waist, and because this is stretchy, and when it stretches on the shoulder, you've got this whole massive fabric sort of like flaring out, and all of a sudden around here on the waistline you get like these really bad gathers. So how do you get them out? Now the problem we've got with this particular one is when this has been folded and the shape has been made from the top and then angled out, this shape is not evened out. So basically what you have is you've got a slight bit of like a twist in it. One is more and one is less. So I've unpicked this and I've laid it out, and it's actually quite a bit on the waist. So I'm gonna try and, without actually getting to cut the whole of the waistline. My initial intention was to cut the waistline, to shape it, and then to reattach it, but that means that we're going to end up getting a joint in this. So I'm going to try and now if you notice with this one, I've laid it out, and basically what's happened is when I even it out, that piece is one is about 2 inches more than the other. So when this is balanced out, now if I am to take this out over here and even this out, then I have a massive problem on the other end. So these are things that when you cut something like this out, you are taking note, and you are, now you can see that this dent over here, in order to take this out, it will become uneven there, and also it has taken up quite a bit from the top. Now the one side of the shoulder has come completely away when I've evened it out from here. Okay, so to remedy this for the moment, and now luckily this customer, this friend is quite slim fitting, so for her possibly I can probably make this work out. But in order to do that, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take this off the shoulder. So the shoulder seams, the front is not too bad in this. It is, the problem is in the back of the abaya. So that at the shoulder, the front and the back were attached. I've separated them, and now I'm going to try and actually take this out from here. It is approximately, one shoulder is approximately an inch and a half off. So this problem either could have been taken out from the bottom or from the top. Now luckily the person whose abaya it is a bit of a size smaller, so we're gonna even this out from here, and then we're gonna take this excess off from the one side. And this is poor layout on the original designer's part that this mistake has occurred. So if you were to make something like this, if the layout was absolutely perfect, then chances are that this problem would not have occurred. Now by cutting this much off just from the one side, and basically one side now is evened out, and hopefully what we're going to have is a better hanging. So they've added a backing for this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this backing off and then redo the shoulder seams, and hopefully that will solve the problem. Now just by cutting out this twisted on the one side, I can actually hold these two and lay out, and when I lay out like this, it doesn't create any dents or anything at that end, which is basically where the fault lay. So just by removing that, and also when we even this out and lay out, we should notice that the area at the bottom, it should be flat and all around without actually causing waves in the middle of the fabric. And that is that the fabric is laid out symmetric and there's no unevenness in the fabric. When the fabric is not balanced out, and if you try and push these out with hand, yes, you will be able to straighten it up by stretching the fabric, because it's on a bias, it flexes one side and the other side, but the problem is there. So when the garment is worn, although you've laid it flat and you've evened it out, actually you've not got rid of the problem. All you've done is smoothed it out one side or the other. So what's going to happen is this should not require massive smoothing out to lay out flat. It should, if you grab a hold of the corners and if you shake it out, it should actually, when you shake it out and you lay it flat, it should actually sit quite evenly without having to massively, fair enough, odd place here or there, you may need to stretch it out, but just to get it flat. But you shouldn't get the massive denting in the abaya, by laying it out. Now in comparison, prior to actually evening this out, I had this massive problem where I was laying it out and I was pulling it that side and this side and trying to get this out. But having, I've laid it the other way around now, just to, the other side I've cut off. Even though I've cut a massive amount off, this is the amount that I've cut off from here. What we have is, if you see this is the excess that's been cut off. So despite the fact that this has been cut off, there is still a small, in order to get this absolutely straight, there is still a very small amount that is uneven in here, which I'm going to still try and get out so that we get an as even spacing in this abaya as possible. So I've done it from the one side and now I'm just going to even it out from the other side. Just to stop any. Now the only problem is that if your abaya is very fitted, then you may have a problem with, if you were to go about cutting so much off, then it may end up making it smaller, which is not what you want. So first of all, you got to look at the fact that, you know, how much allowance have you got, how much play around area have you got. Now normally on these type of abayas, the seaming on this is fairly close to the end. Also with this kind of abaya, what you have is the fabric is, because it's on abaya's cut, it has a fair bit of give, so it will give a fitted look, but the fitted look will, depending on the figure, it normally, this type of cut actually is very clingy and very figure hugging. So if you're trying to achieve that kind of result, then obviously but look at the fabric as well. Prior to designing something like this, you do want a nice flowy fabric. This is a traditional abaya fabric from the Arabian Peninsula. It has like a silky satiny effect to it, and it's not very, it's actually quite rare. You often don't get it here in the Western countries. It mostly comes from the Arabian Peninsula, and it's quite an expensive fabric, because I did try to source this out to make my own abayas, but unfortunately we had problems getting it around here, and so perhaps I would like to request some to be sent over from one of my Arab members, because it's readily available in the Arab countries. I would love to design my own abayas in this fabric. Unfortunately, the fabrics that you get here tend to be a little bit coarse and not the same kind of drape. Anyway, let's hope this resolves the problem, and then I will try and perhaps design and make one. Now before I actually go ahead and attach this back on, I'm going to have a trial run of the front portion as well and see what that's doing, because we've sorted the problem with the back. Now I actually initially noticed the problem with the back as more so than with the front, so let's have a look. It's better to actually resolve the problem at both ends. Okay, there is a slight bit of a deviation in the front as well, so we're going to look at that as well. Now I think one of the reasons why the front, okay, there is a problem on the waist area. No, there is a problem on the whole thing. Such a shame. Now see, when I pull this equally at the front, it's lifting and pulling from, so there is a pull on this. Now you see, without actually noticing the faults, you can't reach a solution. And as boring and as much as we want to avoid this, this is something that without actually finding the problem, we cannot remedy it. And you know, it's like I often associate finding problems with, if you had a medical problem, if you were ill, then obviously the doctors would do a lot of pre-tests to determine the illness before they'll actually look towards giving you the medicine. It's no point in taking wrong medicine for an illness and making yourself worse. Now if we just end up chopping and cutting this without actually noticing the problem, then what's going to end up happening is, okay, I'm going to show you where the problem is, and then perhaps if we can, now it's absolutely even from the arm area, but unfortunately where we have the problem is Where we have the problem is around here. Now one fabric is approximately 2.5 to 3 inches more. So when that's stretched and evened off with the other side of the fabric, what you're going to end up having is unevenness that's actually going to be reflected over here. Okay, so the problem is down there, but it's going to be brought up here because you've gone and attached it to something which was the wrong shape. Okay, I'm going to see what I can do about this and then perhaps guide you on where to avoid mistakes like this and how to make sure that doesn't happen again.